Hello fellow World of Warcraft players, welcome back to a new video on my channel. At this point, it's once again about the Turbulent Timeways and leveling with them, because in the past few days I've received some questions about this and read some statements that aren't really accurate. Among other things, there's the question or statement that Turbulent Timeways are the absolute fastest way you can currently level in WoW Midnight. I've tested that and it's definitely not true. And at the same time, I want to show you how you can level up the fastest during this event. So, not what's the fastest way overall, but if you decide, hey, I want to level up with Turbulent Timeways, how can I get through this event the fastest? Exactly, that's the current factor. That's what we're going to look at. If you don't want to miss any news, tips, or tricks, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and with that, let's get started with this video. So, a claim I saw very often, and people even made videos about it. The fastest way to level up in Dragonflight, in Midnight, Turbulent Timeways, that's not true. So someone made a video and said he took 2 hours to go from 80 to 90, and that this would be the absolute fastest way in all of Midnight. That's factually incorrect. That's not correct because we've already seen other videos from Howden, who is a WB speedrunner, and he managed to reach level 90 from level 80 in 1 hour and 38 minutes. And you have to say, without Turbulent Timeways, so he didn't just spam time box, and he also didn't have that 30% XP buff that was available. So he did the whole thing with his add-on, which I've already introduced to you, Follow the Arrow, and he basically just played open world content and delves. And as it currently looks, that's the fastest way. So yes, it's quite possible that Turbulent Timeways can also be very fast. But in the end, if a speedrunner who has done nothing else in this game for, I don't know, 15 years says, hey, I've summarized for you the fastest route I've discovered in this add-on, based on the sources and also on the different times that show he's right, he's just more credible. Accordingly, the difference isn't that big anymore right now. But theoretically, if you have a route and know what you need to do, what I'll call normal leveling is faster. But it should also be said that the 1.5 hours he managed to pull off, the average player, and that includes me, won't be able to achieve that. The reason is simple. He practiced this run dozens of times, he has experience, he focuses everything on being as fast as possible, so he also uses consumables that give movement speed and so on, which many people don't necessarily use. So if you follow this route, you'll be fast too, and this add-on does a pretty good job of explaining when you need to go where and what you need to do. But without practice, I would say you won't be able to match his time. That's just the way it is. And accordingly, it also depends on how good you are at following the instructions you get on the screen. How well do you know the different delves and other aspects? If you say, I'm really good at that, then you can also achieve very good times. I just tested it on my priest and did the first level only with his add-on. And I needed, I don't know, 10 or 12 minutes. Something like that, which is already pretty fast. If I could keep up that pace the whole time, which I won't be able to do, then in the end we'd be at, yeah, I don't know, 120 minutes. That would be 2 hours. That would be pretty nice. That brings us to the comparison with Turbulent Timeways. I leveled my shaman through it here, and generally I have to say, I don't know, it just feels... It only really feels worthwhile once you have that 30% buff. So if you want to level up with the event, I would definitely recommend doing the 4 dungeons. Well, you have to anyway, to get the 30 XP buff and make sure you're well rested. And even though I was well rested on my way here at level 87, I got it as quickly as possible. Well, you can't really shortcut the 4 dungeons, right? I got the buff, but unfortunately it was more like 20 minutes per level as the rule rather than the exception. All in all, that's because some bosses... or that it really depends on what kind of players you have with you. Like here you have the Paladin, sometimes level 90 people who are farming or doing the weekly quest, and then also running Turbulent Timeways here. If you have people like that in your group, I'd say you can definitely manage to blast through a level in, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 minutes. Unfortunately, it's usually the case, and I don't mean this in a negative way, that you have DPS players with you who are also just leveling up, and then you get situations like this where as a shaman healer, I'm doing more damage than the shadow priest in the group. And you can imagine some of those dungeons took quite a long time, in my opinion. Because if you don't have any level 90 players in the group, I felt like other expansions are different when it comes to time walking. In terms of scaling, they're a bit faster. Maybe that's just my impression, but I'd say sometimes you do spend a bit longer here after all. So on average, it was about 20 minutes per level, and I'm saying that as a healer who already has very, very short queues. So it's very unlikely that as a DPS you'll find a group that will run 16 dungeons with you in a row until you reach level 90. That means you'll also have to wait in between for a new invite, and as a DPS, my wait times ranged from 4 minutes to 8 minutes. And yeah, if you wait 8 minutes, a dungeon usually takes 10 to 15 minutes. One dungeon isn't enough to get a full level up. So you can do the math. 10 minutes for the dungeon, 8 minutes waiting, that's 18 minutes, so it takes quite a while to level up at that point. So yeah, in theory and also in practice, it is pretty fast. You have to admit that, but I still stick to my point with everything I've tested and seen. In theory, these other ways are faster. So what I would recommend to you, if you still say, hey, I want to go through Turbulent Timeways, I want to blast through there, point number one, if your character that you're playing has any kind of tank or healer spec, use it. So even if in the end, I don't know, you're playing a warrior and you want to play him as a DPS in the end, I would still recommend signing up as a tank for time walking. Simply because the queues are so much shorter that way. You can easily save over an hour on your way from level 80 to 90 just because you're not stuck in queues. And I think you can say, okay, maybe it's not super fun for me, or it's not the spec I want to play, but if you save an hour or more, then I think it's justified to do it in the end. Another tip would be find like-minded people, so either friends, guildmates, or anyone else you know. Hey, we're running several dungeons together, because that's usually what slows things down. At the end of a dungeon, it's actually pretty standard that out of 5 people, I don't know, 3 or 4 leave, and then you're left alone in the group, and that means waiting again. If you have a group right away that wants to keep farming, it speeds things up a lot, because then you get instant invites, and I can recommend, feel free to say at the beginning of the dungeon, for example, if you're a tank or healer, hey, I'm going to queue up again right after this, or I want to keep going. Are you coming with me? Because sometimes you have this situation where only one DPS is missing, but even then it usually or sometimes takes 30 or 40 seconds until a new one joins. It's not much, but it can also shorten the waiting process quite a bit. And yeah, those were actually the most important points. It's not meant to be negative in any way. I really, really like this event a lot, and I really enjoy leveling through time walking dungeons because it's just, I don't know, less stressful. I don't have to use my head. I just go in and smash things, but there are too many variables that you can't control to be able to say, yes, this is by far the fastest way to level. I definitely can't confirm that. And yes, with that, thank you very much for watching. We'll now finish this dungeon so you can see how much completion XP you get when you have this buff at 30. And we've now reached the final boss here. You can see it. Before completion, we're at 83% at level 87. And now we're going to get another nice little bump. I can only say, because that's also a question that comes up quite often, the efficient thing here in these time walk dungeons, or what gives you the most XP, is not killing the mobs, but rather the completion XP. Yeah. That really hits hard at the end and gives you a nice juicy boost, and that's what you want to make sure you get. So now the boss is dead, and we jump from 83 to level 88 and 15. So about 32% of a level. That means we'd need about 3 dungeons for 1 level. And if you combine that with the waiting times I just mentioned, or like here now, the tank just left. You see, that takes time again. Even if I'm a healer, it takes about a minute or so until I find someone else. It's fast, it's straightforward, but it's not, as some claim, the fastest way to rush through it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this explanation was helpful to you. With that, see you in the next video. Have a great time and take care.